everybody, and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. We are going to be going through every single one of our prior cycles over the last 10 years because I have found an insane pattern that perfectly shows what is about to happen the second Bitcoin goes into a new all-time high, and we're going to be pulling from about 6 of the very best performing cryptos of all time. Every single time Bitcoin makes a new all-time high, we see the vast majority of our upside potential of the cycle set in, and where we're at right now is that exact same moment of time before we get price discovery. And I wanted to break down all of the most important charts that are going to show exactly how early we are, where the upside is going to be taking place this cycle, and how we can look to capitalize on all of this bullish momentum moving forward from here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you do find any value in this video, please do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. And without further ado, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty everybody, here we are to start off today's video, and the best thing that we can do to start this out is lay the foundation and understanding exactly what it is that causes all the altcoins to blow up and what we can expect to see when Bitcoin goes into a new all-time high for the first time in this cycle. Yes, technically Bitcoin hit 74,500, but we haven't really been into true price discovery like what we expect to see each and every bull market. When we're looking at Bitcoin, we can go all the way back to the beginning of these cycles and we can see pretty much the exact same turn of events. Bitcoin will go through this long reaccumulation phase after its blow off top, and then once Bitcoin actually starts to break out of those prior all-time highs and enter once again into price discovery, this is where the real upside in our portfolio sets in from the altcoins. Now keep in mind guys, we're going to look all the way back, and we're pretty much only going to be taking a look from this 2013 cycle and onward because all of our altcoins weren't around until that 2013 cycle, most of the earliest ones being kind of towards the tail end of that bull market. And the reason we're going to be looking at some of these older altcoins is because these older altcoins, whether they were from 2016 to 2017 or maybe even in our last cycle, all of these were at one time best performing altcoins of a cycle. I'm not going to say that all the altcoins are going to continue to outperform like they did in one of their earlier cycles, but when we take a look at how these altcoins accumulated, it gives a very obvious explanation for what to expect moving forward from here. So what we're going to do, we're going to come down here and we're going to actually take a look at the Bitcoin chart, and then we're also going to be comparing it to some of the very best performing altcoins all the way back in their first cycles. So XRP is a prime example, considering it was one of the very best outperforming altcoins throughout the entirety of 2017, and it massively outperformed almost everything throughout that year, going almost instantly vertical. Now when we're looking at this, remember guys, Bitcoin and XRP both peaked over here in 2013 at the exact same point. So the oldest altcoins we really have pretty much get their start over here in 2013. And notice here, once we peaked in 2013, XRP pretty much did nothing besides go down and sideways throughout the last couple of years. And it was Bitcoin actually making its uptrend. Notice how Bitcoin it started uptrending throughout this entire 2 years leading into the breakout of an all-time high. Bitcoin had done nothing but maintain higher highs and higher lows, while XRP really did nothing besides make lower lows and lower highs, as we pretty much just went sideways at this support floor. But remember guys, the second that Bitcoin goes into that first all-time high is always when the altcoins start to do the exact same thing. The only difference is altcoins have been suppressed. Bitcoin is making these higher highs and higher lows, and every time it does that, the altcoins are going down or lower. They're not really doing a heck of a lot. So all of that is just suppression. All of that pressure is getting added and added until finally, the second that Bitcoin makes that first big breakout into price discovery, and I'm talking real price discovery, because technically this would have been a new all-time high breakout, but is that really price discovery? No, it's not. This is what I would consider price discovery, a very clear breakout into new all-time highs. And what we notice in that exact same move that Bitcoin did all of that, XRP went from 0.0061 all the way up to like 40 cents in one big move. It only took the matter of 2 months for XRP to go up over 100x from the point that I drew, and you're looking at Bitcoin, you know, only making a couple 100% into a new all-time high. So what we have to expect here, guys, is that as Bitcoin first enters new all-time highs into price discovery, we should expect to see whichever altcoins that are going to be the big leaders of this cycle, that's the one that we're going to make their big moves in. It's always once Bitcoin goes into new all-time highs that we see all of this new profit kind of rotate out of Bitcoin and go into the altcoins, and then we we see them start to pick back up. Because up to this point, the altcoins have always just kind of lagged. They haven't really done a heck of a lot. And we can come over here and look at XMR as being another example of an altcoin from 2016 and 2017 that did this exact same thing. XMR was one of the best performing altcoins of that cycle, and how it behaved once Bitcoin went into that new all-time high, you guys are going to see that it's relatively the same as what we saw with XRP. XMR, didn't quite perform as bad as XRP. It started to uptrend a little bit quicker, but nonetheless, really this wasn't much of a lot of anything. Just a lot of down and sideways type price action throughout the entirety of Bitcoin doing its thing. But notice here, XMR actually started to front run a little bit earlier, whereas once Bitcoin started to make that run just to those prior all-time highs after the halving, it was in that first big breakout that we actually saw XMR kind of do the first breakout as well. So what I've noticed is you're going to have altcoins that are going to lag throughout the entirety of Bitcoin kind of accumulating as Bitcoin's starting that next leg up into new all-time highs. A lot of altcoins are still just going to kind of trend sideways and not do a heck of a lot. However, other altcoins are going to be a little bit more of an outlier, and they're going to continue to kind of lead alongside with Bitcoin. But the big thing to remember here, even if you're buying into an altcoin that's outperforming in the short term and you're holding on to other ones that are just kind of going down and sideways, not doing a heck of a lot, the important thing to remember is once Bitcoin does make that big breakout into price discovery for the first time, the altcoins that are outperforming are just going to also continue to outperform even more. However, many of the altcoins that really have just been forgotten about, the ones that are lagging and underperforming to Bitcoin, oftentimes those will play catch up. And all of that just has to do with the momentum. As Bitcoin breaks out and goes into a new all-time high, we have all of this new liquidity that enters the market. And through that liquidity, we have bullish momentum that is ultimately able to fuel the prices to go up much higher. All of the altcoins that have been outperforming up to this point have more momentum pushing them and driving their adoption. And so oftentimes they end up being the bigger outperformers once the real parabolic cycle even starts. The most important takeaway from all of this is that once that first breakout for Bitcoin starts into price discovery, that's where things get very parabolic for a lot of altcoins, especially the ones that have been outperforming up to this point. We can also come all the way back and even look at the cycle of 2020 and 2021 and see the same similarities in structure, where Solana was basically one of the very top performing altcoins throughout that entire cycle. And when we're comparing it to really how it factored into Bitcoin's accumulation, we see a lot of the same similarities once more, where Bitcoin is making its accumulation, it makes that big run and starts to go into new all-time highs. Notice here how Solana had already kind of been leading the way, right? This was a higher high and it already technically made a new all-time high as Bitcoin was still consolidating below those range highs. This would be an example of like in Monero, where Monero was already kind of starting to break out with Bitcoin before Bitcoin had made a new all-time high yet. So there's always going to be certain outliers that do this. Solana was a good example of one of the altcoins that did this exact same thing. However, once Bitcoin makes that new all-time high breakout, Bitcoin went from 20,000 to 42,000 in one big move. That was right here where all of the altcoins started to break out of their bottoms and then started to make their next big impulses as well. And notice here that that ultimately led Solana to go from like $3 all the way up to about $60 in one big move. Not only that, but Solana also ended up going even higher, as we're continuing on inside of the cycle. So, where Solana was before Bitcoin made a new all-time high and even shortly after, this was still a good buying opportunity and we were still very much early into this cycle. Anybody could have bought Solana right here around $2 and $3 and they would have been very happy with those buys, knowing that Solana was going to end up peaking all the way here at $260. So this is something I want you guys to be aware of. Every cycle we have outperforming altcoins, and every cycle they usually don't do anything until Bitcoin makes a new all-time high. And then the second that Bitcoin makes a new all-time high, that's where the floodgates are open and we see all of this upside potential into price discovery set in. And it doesn't really matter which altcoin you're looking at. We can come over here and look at Terra Luna, the one that literally collapsed and went to zero, and we can see even the same similarities in this. I bought this all the way back down at 32 cents, and the reason I bought this was just because of the fact it had really just done nothing but go sideways and down, and then I saw this perfect little Elliott wave impulse right there, and I knew that that was a wave 1. I didn't know that it was going to go this parabolic into a wave 3, but the reason I bought it was because I knew that the Elliott wave setup was the most bullish type that you can get. Now when we're looking at Terra Luna and we also applied the same analysis with Bitcoin, we come over here and look at Bitcoin. we draw a line at that prior all-time high, and then we zoom in here and look at Terra Luna, we're going to see the same similarities, where really the second that Bitcoin goes into a new all-time high breakout, that was the second that Terra Luna also started to make its parabolic impulse. And then the second Bitcoin was actually into a new all-time high, that was where Terra Luna went from 50 cents all the way up to 22 bucks in one big pump. And this is what's to be expected every single bull market. If you're holding any altcoin that's going to be the best performing altcoin over the cycle, one of the really good ones that gets a lot of adoption, you should expect that your investment is going to do something like this in that first big breakout. Doesn't matter which altcoin you're looking at. We can even look at XRP as an example of this. But what they end up doing is they make one big parabolic run into new all-time highs, and then we get a big correction. And then that correction usually takes us into one more final type of move to finish the bull run. We can see that happen with XMR. We can see that that correction was taking place right in here. And then that led us into that final blow off top. We can also come over here and look at Solana, seeing the same thing where we had this first leg up, Bitcoin goes into price discovery, Solana makes this big breakout, and then after that we get this short-term corrective period before that leads us into our final blow off top there. Every one of these charts does this exact same thing. You know, Terra Luna was another example of this, where Bitcoin goes into a new all-time high, Terra Luna goes into a new all-time high, and then we get this big midway correction. This one was an 82% correction before our final blow off top. Every single good altcoin does this. I don't care which one you're looking at, they all follow this. If you're looking at an altcoin that was added to exchanges prior to Bitcoin going into a new all-time high, this is what they're going to end up following. Now, there's going to be certain outliers. Some altcoins lag throughout the entirety of the cycle. It might take Bitcoin a huge move into price discovery before they start breaking out. That's to be expected. But what I'm talking about with you guys right now are outliers. Solana, XMR, XRP, all of these altcoins from prior cycles that were significantly outperforming the majority of the altcoins out there. This is the same pattern that they all follow throughout the cycle. And even coming over here and looking at cycles that have only ever been around for the last couple of years. SUI is a good example of this, and so is SEI. Both of these are just inside of their first cycles, right? Both of these charts look relatively similar, where we got added to exchanges, we made a listing pump, we corrected back down, and we've pretty much just made our first higher high of this new cycle. Remember, when we come over here and look at Solana, Solana looks a lot like both of these altcoins. Specifically, in yesterday's video, I talked about SUI and why I believe that SUI is going to perform so well. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it looks identical to Solana in that first cycle. Both of these did the same thing. Remember, guys, where Bitcoin was when it made a new all-time high, Solana was right here. It had just started to make that next leg up into price discovery. So it's interesting to me that when we're looking at SUI today, it's at that exact same moment of time. And when we take the time to zoom out and look at Bitcoin, Bitcoin's also right on the verge of that new all-time high breakout. So when we're taking the time to just analyze all of these different altcoins, we can see the same similarities playing out once more. We can apply Bitcoin, and we can see that in the same ways that once Bitcoin made that new all-time high, whether it was 16 and 17 or whether it was 20 and 21, all of those altcoins really saw the majority of their upside potential set in right after we got into price discovery. We haven't quite done that yet this cycle. Looking at Bitcoin, coming over here, we can see, you know, that we technically have had peaks above and we have technically made a new all-time high, but the type of move that I'm talking about is like this, where everything's just going vertical into a new all-time high, and we're very clearly outside of those prior all-time high levels. Bitcoin has yet to do that this cycle, but when we're comparing some of the altcoins that have really shown a lot of adoption this cycle, you know, SUI is a good example of this, getting a lot of buy support after it bottomed. I think that this is going to be one that runs the hardest once Bitcoin goes into price discovery. If we're going to see Bitcoin follow along the same path, maybe does something like this, we run up to 100 to 120K before pulling back, it's in that move that we would expect altcoins that have just kind of trended sideways and have maintained their first little higher highs. Those are going to be ones that end up running, you know, maybe SUI goes from $1.50 all the way up to like $10 in one big sweep. Maybe it goes to $20. I don't know. I'm not trying to predict the price. I'm trying to tell you guys how this is exactly what happens every single bull market, and it doesn't matter which cycle you're looking at. We can look at the top performing altcoins all the way back from 16 and 17, and we can apply those altcoins to what we saw in 20 and 21. Even though the cycle was a little bit different, they still followed the exact same path where Bitcoin makes a new all-time high. All of the altcoins altcoins explode behind it. We make a midway pullback. That was kind of what all of these other altcoins did here, like XRP, XMR did the same thing. But then Solana also did the same thing even in 2020 and 2021. Terra Luna, same exact thing. All of these follow the same path. So when we're taking the time to zoom out and we're looking at what altcoins have the potential of seeing a lot of adoption when Bitcoin finally gets outside of that all-time high, I really think that SUI and SEI are going to be the two that see a lot of instant adoption, because the charts to me look identical to what we saw with Solana in that last cycle. Solana followed this pattern almost identically. So as we're zooming out here, we're seeing Bitcoin right on the verge of a new all-time high. And we're seeing some of these altcoins that have only been around throughout this one cycle, this current cycle that we're in today. I do believe that these are going to be some of those that end up running the hardest once Bitcoin finally gets into that new all-time high. We can apply Solana to SUI and we can get pretty much the exact same, form of analysis as what we just looked at, where all we're at right now is just this first leg up, right? So if we take the time to zoom out, we move this chart to like a weekly time frame, and it looks just like that. This is where we're at in the grand scheme of things. SEI is just this little teeny blip on the screen, and this is where it's going to be coming. So technically, guys, we are right here at the very beginning. Because remember, when we're counting Elliott waves, I always draw Elliott waves just because it's easier for people to understand where we're at in the cycle. That's the wave one. That entire first little leg up is wave one. This was wave 3, wave 4, and then that was our wave 5. So SEI and SUI, or SUI, they're both inside of this wave 1 and wave 2. You can't even see that on the beginning of those charts for our best performing altcoins because they did so many multiples once getting outside of that price discovery. So when we're looking at this, I wouldn't be surprised to see the exact same thing play out again, where maybe SEI runs up to $5, pulls back, and then we go even for another higher high, and we end up this thing sitting at $10 by the end of this cycle. I don't know for sure, guys, and I'm not trying to predict price. I'm trying to share with you guys how every cycle plays out and how we can look to make profit on this one, knowing, how the last 10 years have played out over the course of the bull runs, applying everything that we've learned to what we're seeing today, because what we're seeing today really isn't any different than what I've seen in those prior cycles, and I'm really confident that we're all about to make a significant amount of money once these things start to break out. So guys, if you did find any value in this video, please do me a favor, hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. You don't want to miss out on any of this stuff. If you want to see anything on buying, selling, trading in this cycle, I just bought a new SEI meme coin today. Full of confidence that these things are going to boom. We just saw what happened with the SUI ecosystem when it started pumping. All of the meme coins blew up. So if you guys want to know how I'm actually getting early and positioned into not only SUI but SEI and many of these other altcoins out there that I really do believe are going to see some insane adoption in the same way some of these other altcoins I just covered did, you got to join my Discord server. And to do that, links are in the description to sign up on my website. From there, from my website, you'll be able to get lifetime access on anything I'm buying, selling, trading over this cycle. And then especially if I end up doing anything with meme coins, NFTs, even outside of just typical trading, I always post all of those things that I'm doing with my portfolio inside of that. So if you guys want to see how I'm taking profits at the end of this cycle, where I'm going to sell any of these altcoins I'm buying right now, you got to join the Discord server, linked in the description on my website. I appreciate you guys. I love you. And with that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.